Hello and welcome back to our How to Paint series of tutorial videos. If you joined us last time, I'm sure you've already seen quite a bit of this, but we are doing a proxy model for a Dark Angels Knight. Let me actually look at what these guys are called. Deathwing Knights. There we go. James Workshop himself would personally come and abuse me if I didn't get the name proper, so we'll make sure we have our bases covered. And if you haven't seen the last part for some reason, I highly recommend you go back and watch it. It'll cover kind of our first layer and the priming layer. But we also showcased that it was a 3D print from Ghamak, I believe is how you pronounce that. He has a page on My Mini Factory. I'm not sponsored or anything. He didn't ask me to do this. I'm assuming it's a he. Maybe it's a team of people. I don't know. They're very professionally made models. But I just really like them, and James Workshop is very expensive with his many models. They're very good quality. I will say that about Games Workshop, but man, they are pricey. So we're going to be going with the cheaper option here. Forgive me, Lord, for I have sinned. I have 3D printed. And we're going to be jumping right back in. Now again, if you didn't watch last time for some reason, we started out with a base layer of Xandri dust. And with this second layer, we're going to be hoping for the best, because I haven't actually done this paint scheme before. This is new territory for both me and you. We're going to be using a layer, good lord, starting off very badly already, of Ruckhearth Flesh. Now, I've never done this paint job before, but I saw someone on Reddit saying that it is the kind of preferred method they like to use, so we're going to try it out, and we're going to give it a bit of a whirl. And if it's terrible, I can just blame them, and that's fine. But if it's great, we will take full responsibility for it. We 100% came up with this ourselves, and I'm happy with that. We'll make that claim, right? No, if I can go back and find the post that said what paint job to use, I will throw it out there, probably in the description. But if not, I do apologize. I don't want to take credit away where credit is due, but it's just kind of the way it goes sometimes, unfortunately. And for what I kind of want here, just going off what I've already done, I actually really kind of like the color that we're ending up with. Again, if you're new to this, and I will preach on this every time, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's very important. Make sure that you are thinning your paints. You want just a little bit of water mixed in, not too much. If you're very new to this, it's very easy to go too thin or too thick. Here's a pro tip for you. It's always better to have more water mixed in than too much paint. So don't be afraid to kind of play around with how much you're mixing in of both. Get a good feel for it. As we kind of get into the nooks and crannies of our model here, we will hope for the best. I don't think we really want to cover any of the Talbird. I did do my first layer covering it just because I kind of want to play with the color that we'll get doing a layer of green on top of the tan. Never really done that before, so we'll see if it comes out good or not. But I don't think we want to go too light with it. Not yet, at least. maybe we'll change our mind on that in the future. So we're just going to kind of avoid doing any of the cloth with this base layer. And we'll be getting in all of the little nooks and crannies. I'm using a smaller brush this time. We will get back to Old Reliable at some point, I promise. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, it is my horribly run down favorite brush, actually. I've used this thing for months. It has done me well. And as long as it lasts, I promise we will continue to do videos with it. That is my solemn promise to you. Even if it starts to fall apart and we're missing half the bristles in it, I will keep trucking with it as long as we can. It is my absolute favorite. It's done me well, and it deserves that much, right? And I'm already making a mess here, getting some on the Talbird when I don't mean to. I apologize. but it's nothing we can't clean up. That's the other nice thing about thin layers, is that cleaning up a thinner layer is much easier than cleaning up a thicker layer. It won't really be noticeable on your finished product. If your paint's too thick, and especially if you're going back over layers, it's going to look really kind of textured and bumpy, like you have too much paint on it. I know that's kind of a dumb way to explain it, but that's kind of just, that's the best way I can. I don't know what else to really compare it to. If you've ever done something like repainted your walls or anything like that, or maybe you've painted on a proper canvas before, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. It's the exact same thing. Having too much paint is kind of a universal thing across most mediums, I think. And we'll get in with the legs here. Now, my only gripe with this model, well, I kind of have two, right? The face didn't really come out as kind of highly detailed as I want. It's still very good, but it's a little bit melty looking, in my opinion. And that's not any fault on the creator, I don't think. That's more my print settings being a little bit janky. And that's okay. We'll kind of roll with it. It's nothing game-changing. It's not going to make me throw out this whole project and redo it. But it is just kind of something to be aware of. Also, and this is kind of a thing on the creator, the gaps between the armor and the legs here, it just seems like a really wide gap. I don't know if that's just me, like my OCD going off, but it just seems like abruptly wide. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's not the worst thing, but I could do without it. And we'll get some more water on our brush. I kind of have this chronic problem of being very conservative with how much paint I put on my palette at any given time. So it tends to dry out very quickly. But it also means that it's not too thick because it's just sitting there, in a big puddle for minutes at a time. So we'll take the pros with the cons here as we roll along. And we're kind of getting into an awkward little area here, and you can't really see it because I can't really see it, but the underside of the boot, you can kind of see we missed a little bit last time, and that's okay. If you can't see it when you're painting and you can't really reach it with a brush, odds are you won't be able to see it on the tabletop, especially when you're 2-3 feet away from it, standing up, and it's sitting down on the table in front of you. So don't worry too much about it. I'm not telling you to skip painting parts of your model. I think that's bad advice. But if you can't reach it, I really wouldn't stress too much about it. And again, I'm not doing it because I'm lazy. But you can do sub-assemblies. And that's basically where you paint your models kind of before you put them together. It's a lot slower of a process. If I was doing like commission work, I probably would do that just to make sure I get everything. Excuse me. But for what we're doing now, and these are all just going to be kind of pieces that go on my shelf for me to enjoy personally, I don't mind missing a few spots in the harder to reach areas. But there's a pro tip for you. If you want to hit everything and you're doing a professional piece, or maybe you're putting it into a contest or something, do sub-assemblies. Takes longer, is much more effective though. And we're just going to be going over a few of the areas that have dried already, just to give it a nice second pass over. And as we kind of finish up with this layer, I'm really liking what we have already. I will probably throw a wash over this when it's said and done, but for kind of the base color it's given us, I think it's really nice. It's kind of a off-white kind of creamy feeling, and that's pretty decent. Again, I've never really painted Deathwing before, so I don't have anything to really compare this to, but overall I'm happy with it. Just being a kind of standalone piece. I do have a few more prints going of similar units to this model. Actually, I can show you one here. It's just a more or less the same thing, but slightly different. He has a cool sword instead of the Crozius thing, I think is kind of the name for that. Maybe it's just a staff, I don't know. I've been reading the Word Bearers novel in the Horus Heresy series, so I'm very up to date on the kind of more religious iconography names. And we will make sure we get everything, even the stuff we can't see here. And I think overall, it's kind of good enough to kind of call it for now with this layer. Actually, I swear every time I say this, I end up finding another spot where I think I'm finished and just, whoops, no, in fact I am not. Again, I think I covered this in the first part, but the underside of the arms, especially where the pauldrons are very easy to miss. Actually, I didn't even get this arm. I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about thinking that I'm done. Good lord. But especially with the pauldrons being on there and being the kind of shadow effect underneath, it is very easy to miss, so you want to make sure you get in there, at least with a light layer, just to say that you covered it, right? You don't want to look too sloppy when you're all said and done, because that is part of the model you will actually be able to see, so it's not something you can just kind of pass away as hiding off in the shadows, so be careful with that. And as I look over this one final time, let me clean up the chest piece a little bit. Again, sometimes it can take 2 layers, sometimes it can kind of take 3 or 4, just depends on how light your paint is. And thinner layers are always better, so don't worry about having to do multiples. I think we're going to go ahead and say that is kind of a finished product on that layer. So now we're going to be moving on to the Talbert, and this is where it's going to get a little bit scary, because it's going to be very easy to kind of get sloppy with this and make mistakes, and that's okay, especially as a beginner. If you're new to this, making mistakes is what makes you learn, so don't be afraid to do that. And excuse me as I quietly try to not peek the microphone opening these paint pots. For some reason they like to do that. We're going to be opening up our Caliban green here. If I could show it properly, I apologize. Very nice dark shade of green here. I'm a big fan of it, and especially as the name implies, it is kind of the go-to for Dark Angels. I don't know about Deathwing. We will see how this kind of blends when we're all said and done, but at least what I'm hoping is that it doesn't come out too terribly. And actually, I'm kind of looking on my desk now for a smaller brush, because I can already see we're going to have some difficulties here. It's too small. I tell you what, I think we'll just roll the dice with this one. And again, get just a small amount here on our brush at a time, just so we don't waste too much paint as it dries out. Nice thin layer. And we're going to go ahead and start with the back, actually, because there's much more room to kind of play around with. Don't have to worry too much about getting close to making any major mistakes. And as I say that, we've immediately come up to our first challenge, and it's not too bad. Now, an important thing I don't think I've really talked about before is that we don't want to go over a layer, like where we just painted while it's still wet. If you can avoid that, it'll kind of give you more obvious brush strokes once it's all dry. So try to avoid that. Let an area fully dry before you go back over it, or at least as much as you can. You shouldn't really be in a rush normally, but for the sake of our video and keeping things kind of quicker here, we are in a little bit of a hurry. And very gently get in here. Now normally I would say we can go back over and fix mistakes, and of course that's still the case, but going back over a dark layer with a thin layer is a little bit challenging, and if you can avoid it entirely, I would recommend it. But sometimes, mistakes are inevitable, so don't worry too much about it. Just know that it's going to be kind of a chore to fix. And if you're okay with that, perfect. then paint away to your heart's content, and don't worry about it too much. But if you want to get these guys out kind of quicker, and you don't want to waste time going back over things, just be very careful where kind of your talberd kind of connects to your more metallic parts of the armor here. And especially as we get into these under areas, it's very easy to kind of lose track of your brush. That's okay. Again, if you're in the shadows and it's a spot that you can't really reach too well, it's not as visible. So don't worry about making mistakes too much there, because odds are you won't be able to see it. You might know it's there, but if you can't see it, cool, out of sight, out of mind. Let's move to the back of the talberd. And I don't know if you can see it too well, but there is that's our first mistake. There is kind of a under part of where like the armor comes back, and the talberd kind of breaks there underneath the arm. So make sure you don't cover that entirely. There is a little bit of a gap you have to play with. And we're not going to be doing this any sort of clean, so just do the best you can. If I had a smaller brush, this would be a little bit easier, but I don't have one at hand right now, so we're just going to do what we can. And get in here. I'm being very messy with that. That's okay. I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly content. Go back over the areas we missed. And this is dried, so we can do another layer, and already you can see, even with just the second layer, we'll probably do a third one. It's looking much better. It's helping hide those brush strokes. And if we tried to do this while it was still wet, it would not. It would actually kind of make it much more prominent. So try to avoid that if you can, just as a general rule of thumb. And I know some people like to do the underside of their kind of coats and capes and whatnot a different color, but honestly, I'm not too bothered. Maybe once we get kind of a more finished product here, I'll change my mind on that, but I think for now, we're just happy with having it all green. And again, if you don't want to make your guy green and off-white, that's fine. These are your models. Another horrible sin I have to confess. James Workshop, please forgive me. Jimmy Space himself. I have the model for the Dark Angel himself, the first son, right? Lionel Johnson. However, when I got him, I did not have a Dark Angel's army, and I still really don't. I have a handful of models, but I don't have a full built army. So I painted him blue. He's painted as an ultramarine, and maybe when one of the next parts I'll show him off. He's not fully done yet. He's pretty close, but it is all sorts of heresy. And to all of you Dark Angels players out there, I profusely apologize. Someday I will go back and get a new model. Maybe I'll strip him down and repaint him. But he's blue. He is a blueberry, and I can't express my apologies enough. Especially, I literally finished painting him, and I think like a week later, I had gotten the Dark Angels book, the first one in the Horus Heresy, and I fell in love with them, and immediately was like, man, I messed up. I love their lore. I think they're super cool. Having the dark age of technology weaponry, and being the first Legion and all of that. I'm like, man, these guys are sweet. I wish I painted this guy in more traditional colors now, but I didn't, and it was a little bit late to rectify that situation. So yeah, bear with me there. I do give my humblest apologies to you Dark Angels guys out there. I have mad respect for you, and I'm sorry I desecrated your figurehead. That being said, though, he looks good, even in blue. And as we finish up with our green here, we can kind of see our model coming together already. I am pretty happy with the overall color that we ended up with. And actually, See if we can't get that lip right there. Now any mistakes that we have, we'll go back with a smaller brush eventually and fix, so don't worry about that too much. And again, as our layers finish drying here, we want to go back over them if they're patchy or blotchy. Sometimes that can give you kind of a nice shading effect, but for what we're doing now, I don't really like the look of it, so we want kind of a nicer, fully painted kind of look. And you will always find that you missed a spot somewhere in these tutorials. I do fully apologize for that. I'm doing my best, especially with the weird kind of camera angles I'm working with. If you're not familiar with my setup, and I feel like I rant about it every time now, I do have, like, my tripod for my camera is right in the middle of my workspace. So not only am I like sitting way further back from my model than I normally would be, I'm also sitting here with a massive obstruction in my face. So I'm working around that. I'm working with a bit of a distance thing. At the same time, I'm distracted, trying to kind of walk you guys through everything. I'm not making excuses. Don't worry, I'm still exactly as terrible a painter as I am when I'm doing these not recording. So, don't get any ideas in your head about me being much better than I seem to be. But, I know the basics for the most part. So, I'm pretty confident I can walk you guys through that much at least, even with all of this in my face. And for the sake of keeping this video the same kind of length as the others, I think we're going to go ahead and call it now. Maybe off camera I will finish up getting a kind of more full coverage. I might do a little bit of the cleanup, going back over it with the Ricarth Flesh again. If you missed the first one, we'll be doing a little bit of cleanup with that, just to save time kind of on the next videos. But other than that, I want to thank you guys very much for watching. And I missed a massive spot. Good Lord. I will also be cleaning this up. It's staring me in the face, and I didn't even realize it. The hood. the entire hood section here. That's going to be green as well. Normally I don't paint with faces. I do the helmet options, so I didn't even think about it. But I'll be rectifying that off camera for sure. It's going to take me a minute. It's going to be kind of messy dealing with that. But I promise I will take care of that before the next video. Again, full apologies. I didn't even realize it until now. So don't crucify me in the comments for that just yet. Either way, back to what I was saying. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Again, you don't have to. Do not feel obligated. Just watching this video is more than enough praise for me. I really appreciate everyone who sticks around, especially this far. I know I tend to rant, but if you like these tutorials and you want to see more, I will link the playlist at the end. I do have some fantasy stuff. I'm going to be doing some Baldur's Gate 3 esque stuff in the future, specifically a certain companion or two, a certain camp follower maybe. A little teaser for you guys. But other than that, we will be calling it here. Again, thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.